section. I'll go over this a little bit later on, but welcoming everyone back here this evening. If you're here for the first time, you are in for, I think, a real treat, a big surprise in terms of the type of discussion going on in this conference call. It is absolutely unique in the United States to have this kind of discussion with a political figure, a direct discussion and dialogue. So obviously, tonight we're all anxious to hear what Mr. LaRouche has to say. This is a dramatic moment in human history. We, of course, had on Sunday the Greek election with the monumental result, with the Greek population standing up, not just saying no, but making a statement for the future of the human race. Then, of course, following that, the crisis, which Mr. LaRouche warned of in discussions we had with him on Sunday, erupted in the financial markets. Emergency meetings began, ECB meetings, Chinese stock market was crashing most of the week. And we then, on Tuesday, directly after Mr. LaRouche indicated that what was required was the introduction of Glass-Steagall, that is the passage of Glass-Steagall. Of course, we had on Tuesday the introduction into the United States Senate of a new Glass-Steagall bill, or the reintroduction of the bill that had been there in the last Congress. This was by the four initiating co-sponsors and sponsor of the previous bill in the Senate, Elizabeth Warren, the Republican John McCain, the Independent Angus King, and the Democrat Maria Cantwell from Washington State. So that happened, as certain people put it, right in the nick of time. So we had today, and of course during the week at the same time of this crisis, the Glass-Steagall bill coming to the fore in the United States, we had the historic meeting of the BRICS taking place in Ufa, Russia, that is in the central part of Russia, kind of in the Caucasus region. And we'll be covering that on the LaRouche PAC website extensively over the next few days. Today, a lengthy declaration, the UFA declaration, was issued by the 5 BRICS countries. We had the launching of several new banks this week, are officially chartered and will be lending and operating later on, including the New Development Bank and the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. So I would just say, as people are getting on, I'd like to welcome you back to the LaRouche PAC activist call, which for the past, including tonight, 8 weeks, has had the special and very special privilege and special operation of having none other than Lyndon LaRouche conducting an open dialogue with citizens. And for those of you who are on, you should realize that generally we have been having somewhere in the order of 500 people on the calls, and I've been advised to inform you that you can get your friends, neighbors, relatives, others on the call. We can max out the call capacity, which is 1,000. In a moment, we're going to have Mr. LaRouche on. We'll, of course, be discussing tonight the mobilization for passing Glass-Steagall, and that will be available to you, information about that in the email coming out to you tomorrow. And information was forwarded to you today and is on the LaRouche PAC website. So in a moment, we'll be beginning with Mr. LaRouche. We're actually waiting to hear what he has to say. And I'm going to now turn on the recording device because I suspect Mr. LaRouche will be on here momentarily.
This conference is being recorded.
So, Lynn, are you on the call? I think he's getting on right at this moment. And Lynn, are you there now? So we're getting Mr. LaRouche on, and we'll be underway in a moment. And again, I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening for the LaRouche PAC Activist Conference call here on the 9th of July. And we'll be waiting for our featured guest to get on and say hello. Lynn, are you there? Well, we are awaiting our featured guest here this evening. Let's try it again. Okay, Lynn, I think I've not got. Okay, I can hear you now. Lynn, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
I
great.
see you.
Okay, it's all fixed. So, all right. So, Lynn, I'd like to welcome everybody back for our call here this evening. This is John Asher in Leesburg, Virginia, and this evening we have with us Lyndon LaRouche for our 8th Fireside Chat discussion, and under obviously dramatic and historical conditions. So, Lynn, we have our people have assembled, and more will be getting on both on the internet and on the telephone. And I'd like to know whether you would like to make any preliminary remarks to us here this evening.
Yes, I think so. Probably as a practical presentation of some things of significant implications. We're now moving directly into the center of two locations. One location is what this event is, which you've been sponsoring for some time, which is a very valuable part of the process, which actually has been saving the organization by maintaining a maintenance of that broad, national-wide process. And I've just gotten into this more recently, but I've recognized exactly the extreme importance of that. We have now a second development since we started this thing with me participating on it in Manhattan. And the Manhattan part is very important and gives us a center, which is Alexander Hamilton Center, really. There are many other people involved in this, but I think Alexander Hamilton is the essential personality who provided the United States with the legacy which we have. And Manhattan is actually, it's still today, despite whatever things that we might regret about some things inside Manhattan, Manhattan is really the spiritual center of the United States. And I treat it that way. We hope that the other parts of the United States will recognize that their affinity to Manhattan. And that's what I think is very important. So what I'm doing now, and it's in process, we had a couple of stumbles in trying to get the thing neatly organized. It's functioning. And we will have on weekends, we will now have on Saturdays, we will have a national program, which will be probably of about 1 hour plus, and a lot of talk around it. We're also looking for very, very important musical developments, classical musical development, for which Manhattan is a very promising area. The musical content there and the quality of it, even though it's been deteriorating over years relative to what it had been, it still is there, and we're determined to make that a resonant center of the whole national process for all of our members and for all of our associates. And that's what we're up to now.
Okay, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn on my button, which enables people to line up and go at it here in terms of questions and discussion.
Q&A session started.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, you can hit *6 for those of you who are participants in this conference call, and that will put you in the queue. I'm expecting, Lynn, by the way, to hear some reports already from our activists about their mobilization to make sure this Glass-Steagall development moves quickly given the current crisis. So I'm sure there'll be some reports on that from some of the people getting on. So yeah, okay.
I should hope that.
Okay, good. And also, I would invite those who are on the internet. We have, Lynn, an audience, a growing audience of people who listen to this live on the various ways through the internet. And we have over here with me, not far from me, I have our LaRouche PAC leader, Matthew Ogden, who is monitoring that, and he'll be giving me some questions from those of you who are on the internet. You can, if you'd like to put forward a question, you can do that on YouTube. You can also, there's a way to do that via Facebook as well, and we'll try to get some of those questions in. So we're going to take the first question up, and I will ask people who are asking questions, please do not use a speakerphone. please give us your first name and where you're calling from, because I think it's very helpful for everybody to get a sense of the national participation. So we'll take the first question up. Here we go.
Hi, Mr. LaRouche. This is Rick from Bergen County, New Jersey. As you know, the Chinese stock market is in a meltdown mode. How do you put that into perspective in terms of the entire situation? Is that an indication that the entire world financial system is potentially going to be melting down? How would you interpret the China situation?
The point is that's a minor part of the whole China operation. It's not a part of the major thing. It's a secondary development, and it was not adequately developed. But that does not mean any problems about the main function of China. China's main function is fine, and this little sidelight, this not really tiny, but otherwise sidelight, has had a problem where some speculation was going on because that part of the China's operation was not really adequately controlled. So some people have made mistakes, and of course in the history of China, before the present institution of China, there were problems, and some of the problems were dumped into a convenient location, which is what is the location of these problems. China's policy generally, in the larger part, is intact. Of course, naturally, people like to make points against China, but they're not really valid. There is a little problem there they have to solve, but it's not the main part of the China policy. It's a secondary part, and about things which were more poorly controlled because they were not well controlled from the beginning.
Okay, I'm glad that question came first because I know this crisis is on people's minds. So we'll take the next question up. Here we go.
This is Ken in Moline, Illinois. The CIA should be completely dismantled because they are the enemy of mankind.
That's an interesting thought. It's not untrue, shall we say. Only by history. Remember, I have had experienced that institution from shortly after the time I came out of military service, the end of World War II, and I've seen that, and I had at a point, just to qualify that, I popped into in the early 1980s. I popped. It was actually 70s. I popped into New York City. I became a rising authority on in economic affairs, and this was going along fine. I was being promoted within the ranks of this organization, and really near the top of it at one point. Then the FBI stepped in and got me thrown out of my own organization. But from that point on, I went on and maintained my own independent approach to this organization, and I became more important than the old organization had been that I had left. So it's not a bad situation.
Okay, here we go. We're going to take another question up here. Here we go.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I took you off the speakerphone. This is Roy Kendall in Visalia, Tulare County, California. Just wanted to ask your opinion on the events of 9/11.
Well, this is a very dangerous business, and it has to be stopped. And I would hope that the introduction of the Glass-Steagall law, which has now been presented as a proposition for immediate action, will solve that problem. If we get back to a true Glass-Steagall law of the type that Franklin Roosevelt had represented, then I think we would have a fundamental change. For example, what's the particular change? The biggest rot inside the United States economy is Wall Street. And if we should have shut down Wall Street a long time ago. It's a gambling center. It is no good. And Wall Street becomes a force to destroy the productive powers of labor. It's a slave shop of a certain kind, a mental slave shop. You have these guys in New York City who are absolute raving idiots. And that's a very fair way to describe them, because they don't do anything much good, and they do a lot of damage. If we get rid of Wall Street, we would actually have an immediate, explosion of progress. It would be a little slow in starting, but getting Wall Street shut down is my number one objective for this moment.
Okay, all right. And let me tell people on the phone that if you want to get in and ask a question to Mr. LaRouche, what you need to do is to hit *6 on your phone, and that will get you in the queue. And again, to repeat myself, in terms of those who are on the Internet, we have someone monitoring YouTube, Facebook. You can write a question, and it will be communicated to me, and we'll get that to Mr. LaRouche, who we have on the phone here for some time this evening. And I'm going to take the next person up.
Yeah, good evening. This is Jim from Michigan. I have many times conveyed to staffers, and one time was able to actually talk to a U.S. rep on conveying the 4 principles of law you have been talking about for some time. And they are very much aware of what I've been saying to them. But in general, I wind up telling them that there has to be a harmony of interest, not just with the parties, but with the main facets of our society, being, agriculture, industry, and labor, and how they must come together. And there's where the perplexity comes in, because they all tend to go off on their own direction as to what facet of the society is most important. And I always come up with disconnects with these people. Would you give me a thought on that?
I understand exactly what you're talking about. I have my own explanation of this whole process, which is really a definition of what the solution is. What's happened is, during the course of the 20th century, that is beginning with some bad things that happened in the beginning of the 20th century in policy. Now, the 20th century has been, now of course we're beyond the 20th century, but the same thing applies still. You have a general degeneration, which has been beginning slowly initially, but accelerating. Franklin Roosevelt, of course, actually stopped the degeneration which was in progress in the century at that time. Once he died, immediately through the FBI, for example, the FBI became the agency which destroyed the mission of him. So that has been bad. The result has been, in net effect, with bounces up and down at moments to moments, and increasingly bad presidents and bad institutions associated with presidents, we've had a degeneration of the United States economy and the conditions of mental life and conditions of work and life generally up to the present time. And the recent period under Wall Street's domination has been the most destructive force that the United States has ever gone through, more than anything else. These are the things that have to be changed. So if we want to judge the policy of the United States as a continuing existence, I think we have something is happening right now. First of all, there is now a Glass-Steagall policy which has been put in by members of the Senate. If that is extended and applied quickly, that will change the perspective. Now, once you get the change in perspective, that doesn't mean you're going to get the benefit. Because once you change the perspective, you open new terms of approach to problems, a change, an improvement to problems. Right now, what that team is doing in the Senate, as proposed in the Senate, is actually an indispensable, immediate point of action to save the United States' integrity. because we're on the verge of a disintegration of the United States economy. I mean a mass killing case. Like we have in the case of California. You have a governor of California who is an absolute criminal idiot. He's the governor. His father was also a governor of California, but he was a great man, as the governors go. And what's going on now is there's a policy of mass murder against the human population globally. And this governor is now an advocate of that policy. So what we have is a war on our hands to rally the forces inside the United States who are well-meaning, but don't always know how to organize the forces to fight. I think I know what the forces to fight must be. I've been at this for a long time, and I've had a lot of roles in this sort of thing. So therefore the question is, are we going to rally ourselves, our forces, practically, is an immediate practical perspective? Are we going to try to make the proposal from the Senate on Glass-Steagall immediately effective? Shut down Wall Street. Shut it down flat and permanently. And we have to then change course. The problem is, beyond that, we do not have a labor force in general which has any memory of what used to be the United States economic policy. You say the economic policy of Franklin Roosevelt in particular, or Kennedy in particular, or a couple of other presidents who were actually good. But we've had for the past equivalently of almost 4 terms of a president, most recently, and they are all evil. So that the Bush family is evil, absolutely evil. Well, after all, Prescott Bush was really a Nazi. He didn't have the name Nazi at that time, but he was a Nazi in every terms of fact. His sons, or his degenerates, should we call them, are actually stupid people. But being stupid people is not a hardship for people who want to be evil. And so that's the kind of situation we have. We had, Cheney, for example. Cheney is a master or satanic figure, actually, who operated within that Bush 2 terms of that Bush operation. So what we have to do now is recognize that those are the facts, that we need to make a certain kind of turn, and now we have to muster the people who have scientific capabilities, in particular, relevant ones, in order to bring us into practices which are available to us. There's a shortage of the people who are qualified to do this kind of work, but they exist. And if they can be brought into play, and if we could get people in the Congress, like this team in the Senate now on Glass-Steagall, we can have a very quick turnabout, not with great financial success, but with a sense of security, which is otherwise presently absent, almost totally absent. So I'm very optimistic about what can happen, but I worry about what might happen.
Okay. Well, I think, Lynn, what you just said there is a challenge for all of our activists on the phone here this evening to be part of rallying exactly as you've just outlined. So we're gonna take the next person up here.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. This is Rod from Brooklyn, and I've been thinking about something. The collapse that happened in Iceland, or was supposed to happen, and how the Iceland government worked around it. They put in a form of Glass-Steagall Act, and they got rid of the bums. They put some of the bankers in jail, and they seem to have survived in pretty good condition. Now I'm wondering if Greece goes through the changes, if they finally get rid of the euro and go over and maybe get help from Russia and from China or someplace else, could they possibly survive this collapse and things would not be that bad as far as the Greeks are concerned.
Frankly, the possibility of success, the line you're talking, is within reach. The problem the obstacle comes, we can do that. I mean, if there's a will in the United States leadership to do that, they could do that. The question is, can we develop a program, a science-driven program, which is adequate to catch up with some of the terrible things that have happened to our population? For example, the ignorance of our citizens. They do not have access to modern technology. Modern technology exists, but they don't have it. They've never been offered it. There are few people, engineering fields and so forth, who do have those skills, but they're a very small part of the population, the employed population now. So we have to have a energizing force of the type that Franklin Roosevelt did back in the 1920s, 1930s and 20s and 30s with his program then. And a program like that is what will solve this problem. That's I think is the best shot we have. And I think that Manhattan, my conception is that if we understand what Manhattan really represents, and I'm talking about really the real core of Manhattan, with people of all kinds of backgrounds, but they represent something between 25 and 30% of the adult population in Manhattan still. Different skills, different that, but they're all good people in a sense. And therefore, my concern is say, well, look, Manhattan is really the center of the United States because it was made that way, it was built that way by Alexander Hamilton, who pulled the thing together, coming out of the New Jersey, or out of the Pennsylvania Congress. And he did it. And that thing has been always successful when applied. Now, what we're doing now is, in a sense, we say, well, let's go ahead with the Hamilton conception. But let's do it in terms of modern terms of reference, modern science, so forth, that's real science. And if we can muster that, and I think really a kind of convention around Manhattan can be the vehicle to stir things up. Because I know in the various states, I have a lot of experience in the various states through my old ages process. And I know there's certain parts of the United States which are really very prone to progress. And we have a lot of the southern states are quite the contrary. They are the degenerating process of our United States, chiefly. Good people there in some cases, but they're the exceptions. And so therefore, we have to think in terms of organizing our people, especially the people who think in these terms, of progress. And there are many things, scientific abilities, scientific principles, which are not being used now, which can be called into play very rapidly. For example, just take one. One of these things which I'm involved in because I'm associated with a person who's the leader in this thing, Ben Dennison, is working in the basement team. And he's a scientist who's been working on the question of how we can use beyond the solar system to the galaxy, and from the policies of the galaxy, which we do understand to a significant degree, by no means a wholesome degree, but a significant degree, we understand how mankind dealing with water questions can be solved. So there are things like that which we must undertake. These are new avenues of recovery for mankind, and we must use these. We must use every kind of scientific ability which will free us from the very sort of slavery of the conditions of employment of most families in the United States today. It's a form of slavery, degradation, impoverishment, brutality. Everything that's represented by the Bush family, by Obama, and so forth is just plain evil. But we can't just say, let's get rid of evil. We've got to come in with some actual active ideas which are going to be easily successful and will address the urgent need for progress.
Okay, we'll take another question up here.
Hello, Len.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're in your 90s, but you are a homo novus to me and always have been.
Thank you.
This is Jesse Maven, Klamath Falls. I want to thank you for just keeping the American system alive and the real history of the United States, but also the history of the more saner side of the earth, and the people that have, led that fight, going back to Kusa and others. So thank you, Len. Thank you very much. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Und?
All right.
Yeah. That was quick.
Hi, Mr. LaRouche. I'm Patrick from Connecticut. Now that Greece has said no to the austerity of the euro, how will Greece be helped by the BRICS nations?
Now, to Greeks, there will also be from Russia. It will also be from from parts of Eurasia. The Greeks are not going to be let down. Now, the problem right now is what? The problem is, number one, the British Empire. And the British Empire is the greatest pressure point, which makes the German government itself behave very badly. Now, not all parts of the German government are evil. We've got about 3 or 4 people in certain parts of a bunch of thugs in some of the German institutions, which are blocking any possibility of solution. Therefore, what's happening is that the combination of nations which are allied, including Russia, including nations around there, but also China, also South America, most of South America, some parts of Southern Africa which are free to do things, and other little nicks and crannies here and there. So there is a process now in place, including in our own Congress, the Senate, for example. The Senate has taken a step of action, which, if carried through, will change the situation to save the United States from a terrible collapse itself. And if we can do that, then we've got a winning chance ahead of us.
Okay, take another question up. Hello?
Hello?
Yes,
This is Benjamin Brown from Tomahawk, Wisconsin.
Huh.
My question is about this H.R. 1205.
And what is that, Mr. Brown?
It's a bill that's coming up, H.R. 1205.
But what's the content of the bill? What's the nature?
The foreign, the UN.
Okay, so the bill is dealing with you're asking
dealing
Mr. LaRouche,
with the UN, yes.
So you're asking Mr. LaRouche what his view is about the United Nations, basically.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Well, we're hoping that the United Nations can play. The United Nations is a very weak instrument right now, as I think you, in placing that question, are reflecting. It is a weak thing. It's been stripped down of its potency, with the kind of potency it had from its inception. I think that could be fixed if we get Wall Street out of the United States in a healthy way, just a healthy way. Get Wall Street out. End that thing. And that means we're going to have to tame a lot of members of the Senate in particular. The Congress is problematic, but the Senate contains some really tough enemies of the United States from inside. These guys are greedy and contemptuous toward the American people. And that's not a good thing. It's on the assumption that we do that, the assumption we get that cooperation, that the United States itself is able to resume taking charge of its own affairs in terms of, say, the restoration of Glass-Steagall, pardon me, that we can solve the problem. And that's really the one thing, the only one thing, which can really solve this problem at all. If we don't get Glass-Steagall through, as though it's being proposed now, and if we sit around without doing anything about it, we're finished. At least as a joyable nation, we're finished. So that's right on the table right now.
Okay, and that the number, by the way, so people don't get these bills confused, the Senate bill that Lyndon LaRouche just referred to is 1709. That is the number of the Glass-Steagall bill that was just introduced by the 4 U.S. senators that Lynn just referenced. And that's the one that, of course, we have got to get through quickly. So we'll take another person up here. Okay.
Hello, this is Roy Kendall in Visalia, California, Tulare County.
Oh yeah, Roy, did you have? I noticed you were on there before. Did you have something you missed? It didn't get in before. Is that?
Yes. The question is, and I thank you very much. The question is whether or not you would agree with the NIST report on Building Number 7, which causes Building Number 7 to come down due to fires, office fires, or by controlled demolition, which is the opinion of architects and engineers for truth.
Okay,
so simple fire versus controlled demolition.
Mm-hmm.
Has nothing to do with Glass-Steagall, nothing to do...
Okay, Roy was asking about 9/11, apparently.
Yeah. Sure. I have no problem. Then that is really a crucial thing. You have no problem with me on that one. That has to be taken. But the question is, how do we've got a whole package of problems, not of problems, but a problem. And these things have to be done. For example, in California, you can't get anything good done right now. And the adjoining state, you can't. They're out there to kill the citizens of California. And that policy, for say, the California side, that's life or death for California. If this governor continues the program, which is of mass killing, human killing, in the United States, which he is actually installed and is imposing, you don't have anything. So this is going to be a fight. It's not going to be a simple settlement of protection, a proposal. This is a fight. It's a war. And the people who are behind this war are evil. They're not going to do anything good for you. You're going to have to get the force to put them under control.
Okay, let's take another person up here. Here we go.
Yes, this is Wayne in Virginia. Mr. LaRouche, I wanted to ask you about the current drought situation out west, because we haven't really heard much about it lately. Well, I work in a grocery store part-time. I work in a produce department, and I've been noticing that a lot of the produce that we get delivered, which isn't a whole lot, by the way, we get shipments every 2 days. And most of the stuff is not coming from California. A few things, but very little. Most of the stuff comes from Mexico, Central America, South America, and even as far as South Africa. And I was wondering if you could just speak to this.
Well, yeah, this is something which is not just my Nick in the woods. It's also our team. Our basement team is working on the question of water. but from a special standpoint. We now do have a drought in that area. It's a very severe drought. But it's not a hopeless situation. We have to understand that how the galactic system as such, and what its powers are, what they show us, what we can suggest to us, what we can do, things like that. We can, from looking at the thing from a galactic standpoint, it's that studies of the galactic process and the relationship to water on Earth in there, because most of our water supply on Earth comes from the galactic system, not from the Earth system as such. So therefore, we have access to knowledge of means by which we can reverse this kind of calamity in terms of water supply. But they have to be based on going to a higher level of scientific technology, a technology which is knowable and which can be applied. And it's urgent that we get to work on it and put it into motion. The additional problem is this problem could have been solved a long time ago, except over the course of the 20th century, the United States has been decaying step by step, as most of the European nations had and others, have been degenerating. And therefore they have destroyed the mechanisms that necessary. For example, mechanism, high technology in ordinary production, for example. These high technologies, typified by what the water option is, these technologies are available. They're known, but they are not applied, or they're not developed adequately. They could be. And therefore, what we have to do is kill the green policy. As long as you support the green policy, as it's called, you are committing your own suicide. So get rid of the green policy, get the greensters out of business, put them aside, tell them they're stupid, and let intelligent people deal with the problem. We are doing nothing in practice, in net effect, to save the United States, to save the water supplies or anything else. There are technologies which can, in various levels, in various ways, solve that problem. It's a technological problem, it's a scientific problem, but it's one which can be mastered. We've got to have a team or teams of people who apply themselves to what can be done based on the best scientific information, which is already known, and which can be known much better if we go to work on it.
Okay, and we're going to take another question up here.
Good evening, Mr. LaRouche.
Yes.
My name is Stan. I'm from Queens. I asked you a question maybe about a month ago about what can be done realistically, considering that certain truths are known, particularly about what's going on in eastern Ukraine and the relationship with Russia. So I've asked that question, and I've been thinking for about a month about a driver for, maybe a better influence and following of people so that real action is taken. And I read the Bible, so a lot of the truth really that we know is the only argument. I mean, it sells itself if the people who are listening are actually seeking the truth. So, considering that we know so many things about the government and the wars around the world and toppling of governments, people who actually seek the truth should be driven by that, and I think we should be angry about what's going on. Just as angry as powers were at Turkin in the UN when she accused him of things which were never really happening.
Yeah.
So this is what I think we should speak the truth, and we should be angry about what's going on. And spread it.
All right, let's take the case of a very good question area. Take the case of in Europe today. Take Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is now under the control of an actually Nazi force. I'm not saying, this is not a kind of coloration. This is a fact that the actual controlling forces inside Ukraine had effected a coup d'etat against the Ukraine organization, put leaders of the Ukraine organization under actually, Hitler-like suppression, and have been doing mass murder. And the mass murder has been directed from the United States, been directed from the present administration of the United States, which has imposed an actually actively Nazi system. I mean, Nazis who are Nazis under Hitler, or who have continued the explicit Hitler policy as a policy imposed upon Ukraine, are conducting warfare on that basis. This is being supported by the British Empire, specifically. That's how it works. But you have a certain amount of gutlessness on parts of some other nations who should know better in Europe and in the United States. And it's the United States government, under the Obama administration, which is the backing force for the Nazi system which is imposed on Ukraine. And if we cannot deal with that from the United States and get a presidency in the United States which is not pro-Nazi, because Obama is in fact pro-Nazi in his actions, then we are not going to win anything. But I think the time has come to dump Obama. And we have it under our laws, our national law. We have the ability to dump this guy. And he should be dumped immediately, because he's a purely evil force. He's threatening, he is the key force which may send us and the world into a thermonuclear war, for which very few people will survive. So we have not cleaned it up, and therefore you have to, if you want to get this done, you've got to get the British Empire under control, because they're the people behind it. You've got to recognize that, the problems in the United States administration. Under the Bush administrations, which was tending in this direction, but Obama has been the explicit tool of genocide in the United States. There are other people in other parts of the world who have the same thing. But what this thing in Ukraine, I've emphasized, because this is an example of a nation which is once something different, and I knew leading people in that nation. That is, actual leaders, historical leaders. And they have been taken over and suppressed and often killed by actually Nazi forces. I don't mean Nazi-like forces, I mean genuine Nazis. In other words, the children and grandchildren of actual Hitler Nazis. And the children and grandchildren of actual Nazis are the controlling force inside Ukraine, backed up by the United States, by the Obama administration. That's the case. And if you want to do something about things, those are the things you have to address.
Okay. All right. We're going to take another question up here.
Hello. My
yes,
name is Ruthie from Williamsport, Maryland. In your opinion, Mr. LaRouche, who running for president at this time do you think would be the best person to be president of our country?
Well, the best color would be that which we have with O'Malley. O'Malley, I don't know how perfect O'Malley is or how imperfect he might be, but he's the only one right now running as a presidential candidacy, which is actually competent. I don't know that he is fully competent. I know that what he's doing many things which are competent and are essential and are relatively unique, which is all in his favor. I don't know how far he's capable of carrying the job to get the job finished. In other words, I think he can obviously make good contributions. He's shown that already. He's shown that from his previous political background. But is he capable of doing the job that I know has to be done? That's the question. I think that at present, on the horizon right now, he's the best candidate for president in sight. But is he the right one, or are we missing something? Therefore, I say at this time, well, keep your eye on him and see what you can see in him. Because right now, so far, he is the best performer of actual currently operating candidates. I don't know if he's adequate. Maybe we have to go further. Or maybe the other thing I often say lately is say, well, I know he's doing these good things, but I also know he's not doing some of the things I thought he ought to be doing. And therefore, I would like to see him. What I'm looking for is an idea of a president for which he might be a prospective. I'm not drawing a conclusion on this, but I'd say he is the one who I see now is the most likely person on sight, on the horizon. But is he capable of doing the job that has to be done? That's a different question. And my answer to that is the presidency is not to be formed by one president. No single person can be a president under modern circumstances alone. You have to have a team, and a team which is coherent, which has a coherent mission orientation for the development of this nation and the protection of it. And I think right now I say O'Malley is on the horizon. He's the only one who's made that qualification himself. If I see other people who are coming into his campaign, and if they are the kind of people who his present posture would strengthen, then I would say, wait a minute, maybe we've got a live one. If somebody doesn't shoot him.
Right. Well, I know in that regard, Lynn, I'm sure you got the report from Tony Pappert earlier today that Martin O'Malley issued a very, very strong statement today, a letter, open letter to Wall Street entitled, "I will not let up on you." So I think in the direction you were just indicating about his at least positive potential, what he put out today was very, very strong, including his endorsement of Glass-Steagall.
Yes, absolutely, that's true, no doubt. But you know, I'm a hard taskmaster on these things. I want to make sure we win.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So we'll see what more people want to bring up. Here we go.
Good evening, Mr. LaRouche. My name is Dennis, and I'm from Chicago, Illinois. My question is, it probably might sound like politically incorrect, but most of the people actually kind of started to afraid asking those questions about the same-sex marriages. I don't know how much farther we're going to push that liberalism, and why don't we bring that to the national referendum and finally?
But your statement is a little bit blurred. I mean,
what he said, Lynn, was what he referred to. His question was he was asking what you think about all this business concerning same-sex marriages.
Oh, I hate it. Look, how do you make babies? And if you're not going to make babies, and you're not going to, develop babies into growing young people and eventually adults and so forth and highly skilled, if you don't make babies, how are you going to have people? So the point is, we got to get this off this question entirely. It really is a diversive question which should not have come up. It's obviously a play game, trying to screw and scramble things up, and people should keep their noses out of that business.
All right, good. All right, we're going to take another question up here.
Hello, Mr. LaRouche, Ernest from Chicago. And just a quick follow-up on the question that the gentleman asked about same-sex marriage. I would look at it as being part of this whole genocidal depopulation British operation. Because like you said, if you can't procreate, if you can't make babies, then what's going to happen to mankind? Now, my point I wanted to ask a question on is that this whole question that you were talking about, the degeneration of the educational system in Chicago and in the United States over the 20th century, and being a baby boomer born in 1950, coming up to be 65 next week, actually a week from today, I've experienced that, and I experienced it from the standpoint of when you try to speak to people about the reality of the situation, then they don't get it. They come with some, crap that they've heard from the media or opinion or what have you. And the way that I've summed it up is that through this degenerative process of the educational system, combined with the culture, the degeneration of the culture, the overwhelming majority of our people in the United States have some type of emotional, psychological, or mental problem. So I would ask you, how do you deal with overcoming these emotional, psychological, and mental problems to be able to get people to actually see and respond to the reality?
Well, the only way you can do that is you have to, in a sense, promote people's outlook and develop their powers. Now, that means, in the sense, that it's not just you're going to sit there and have these developments and have these powers. The question is you're going to practice these powers, which means that you are going to identify yourself as having a meaning for mankind in your community. And therefore, you're going to find an occupation, a productive occupation, or something equivalent to a productive occupation, which may be like nursing, for example. That's an occupation. It's a scientific program which people need, which society needs. So if you have people who are employed in things which have that quality, that use value for mankind and for the progress of mankind, you've got the optimal situation in which to operate. However, if you get in some areas, like some areas of Chicago, you get conditions which permeate a whole section of a major city of the United States, and you see a process of destruction, of murder, insolent, absolutely meaningless murder, and all kinds of things coming out of rage, out of pure rage. There's no one cause. It's just plain, pure rage with no sense of any meaning to life itself. And when you get a person who's enraged, has lost their meaning of life itself, human life itself, then you've got the worst kind of policy you can have. Now, our problem is we've got to actually create a shield of environment, of opportunity among all parts of our nation. We're backward. The United States has been going backward in its economic policy and its economic practice for a long time now, especially since, I would say, 1980s, 1990s, so forth. That period, we were going in down. We had a few good presidents. Bill Clinton was a good president for both two terms. His second term was really damaged because the Queen of England actually destroyed his whole operation, an operation against him, and his vice president double-crossed him evilly, and it was pure evil. So Bill Clinton went out of office with a bad tinge on this thing, but he wasn't the one that created it. It was the Queen of England herself who did it. And I know the facts. That is the detailed facts. It was the Republican Party and the Queen of England combined to try to sink him, Bill Clinton. And he was pretty much roughed up heavily. as a result of that. And he was actually a heroic person. He has his own style. He comes from a certain part of the nation, that style and so forth. But he was really a very talented and accomplished and well-meaning person. And we miss him because we would be much better if we had a Bill Clinton in our presidency again. But that's not going to happen. But maybe he'll play a role that's important. But that's the fact. We can do that. We must do that. And what we must do is take the fact. Look, the whole world is on the verge of a general genocide against humanity, a threat of genocide. You have China's progressive. You have other parts, some nations in South America are becoming progressive quite successfully, so forth and so on. We have some elements in Europe which are excellent, useful, but they're not functioning well because the interlocking relations among these institutions just don't function properly. So if we can make the thing function, and the way how do you make it function? What you do is you present to a population an image, which is a realistic image, which they recognize as realistic. Get out of this dump. Get out of this depression. Get out of this grind and enjoy life. Enjoy what you can do in life. Progress. Make new achievements. Things you can be proud of. Make children that you can be proud of. Make them successful in turn, which used to be the American policy. And we've got to get back to that real fast. Real fast. And it being the love of fellow man, the care for fellow man, where you say, brother, sister, we're together. We're working together. We're going to make it work together. And that's the only thing that's going to do any good. We can yell and so forth, all things we can do. But if we can't get that thing moving inside our population, we're going to have a tough time of even surviving.
Okay, and I just want to remind our folks listening on the internet that you can submit a question, and I have somebody who is prepared to hand those questions over to me, and so that we can communicate them to everybody on the call. And just as a challenge to everyone this evening, you can also, for next week's call, invite some friends on. We can get up to 1,000 people on this telephone line, so we could about double what we have. So that would be very helpful to build the audience. We're going to take another question up here right now. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. LaRouche. This is Juan from the Bronx, New York. And the question is, when I talk to people like Glass-Steagall, the question I get the most is, how is Glass-Steagall going to help the deficit problem, the debt that we owe? How would I explain that to them?
Well, what it is, it eliminates all the speculative stuff. It means it would be the death of Wall Street, for example. Glass-Steagall would mean the death of Wall Street. And the death of Wall Street would be one of the happiest moments of anybody's life in the United States who's still sane. And what we've got is now, just being practical about this whole thing, to make it clearer, I think. Sometimes you have to be practical to make the point clear. You can't just generalize. But what's happened now? We've got 4 senators who have introduced Glass-Steagall with a sense of urgency about getting the matter done. Now, that Glass-Steagall, done in that way, would shut down a great part of the present membership of the Senate in the United States. We call them the Seniles. Senate sometimes means senile. And they're greedy. And they really are the agents of Wall Street. You have lots of senators who are agents of Wall Street. You have some Republicans, Democrats who are also agents of Wall Street. So this idea of Wall Street, that we're going to work with the government and we're going to rip off the rest of the population. That's exactly what the attitude is. We want money. We want money. we want success, we want this, we want money. And that's what goes off at much of the Congress up heretofore. Now there are those like the four senators who joined together to push forward the necessary bill are serious. They're not all of the same temperament, but they're serious. Now, it's not just that they're serious. The point, they recognize that the situation now is desperate. They're not talking about a long-term, drawn-out effort to eventually get some bill through. That bunk is not going to work. We must immediately take steps, remedial steps, which in effect shut down Wall Street. Now, if we do that, and we go back to a Glass-Steagall policy with that intent in mind, we are going to have a turnabout for two reasons. First of all, we will eliminate the worst evils in the United States economic system and the social system as well. We'll end those evils. We will also inspire people by proving to them that certain options which they thought were unattainable are now given to them. That is, we will create a change in the economy of the national government to get the garbage out, which is wasting our attention, and to get something needed in. And that is a positive policy, not a negative one. And we can do that. So the important thing is, this is not a long-term, this, that, and so forth. This is very serious and very immediate. The entire United States economy is on the verge of collapsing. Wall Street is now collapsing. Wall Street has been rotten for a long time, but right now it is actually collapsing. It's bankrupt. Wall Street is openly bankrupt. Now, bankrupt is about to go. Wall Street, go. So we need immediately action. So what's happened is some senators have come together of different, shall we say, hues in political outlook. And they've come together for the common purpose to save the United States economy. And the way to save that is to put through Glass-Steagall. The institution of Glass-Steagall will by itself, if just plain done, will change everything. It won't get everything perfect, but we will eliminate the poison which has been destroying our economy since Glass-Steagall was repealed. That's the big.
All right. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, Lynn. We'll take another question up here. Here we go.
With the conversation about Wall Street, how in the world do we bring down Wall Street when there are so many corporations, people and corporations that have billions of dollars invested in Wall Street? I mean, this seems like almost an impossible situation, and nor do I believe that this. I don't see how this could possibly help our economy.
It would. It's the only thing it would. You puncture this balloon, and the balloon collapses, and you have a free area in which to operate. And Wall Street has been the major cause of the degeneration of of economic life and other life inside the United States. Wall Street is the greatest enemy of the United States from the inside. It's also from the outside. Get rid of that, and you have an opportunity. And what this, new law being proposed of the 4 senators, that will do it. That in itself will do it. And at the same point, remember that right now Wall Street is on the verge of blowing apart. It won't be there much longer. It's over. It's dead.
Right. Well, of course, this week, Lynn, they tried to tell everybody that it was a computer glitch which shut Wall Street down for part of one day. But it happened right in the middle of this. So, Lynn, we got a question in from, which was partly answered by you, but partly not answered directly. But I'll just put it forward to you as from somebody who's listening on YouTube, Tony from California. The first part was, how can China control the speculation that has created this stock market bubble? Does China need a formal Glass-Steagall law?
Well, it could probably benefit from one, but the problem is what China did in order to create the system of government, which the new administration would now enforce, did. There was a certain area of business effects in China which were reflections of an old habit. That's the best way to describing it. It's an old habit. So the government of China put aside to one side this particular kind of operation. What kind of an opportunist operation? It's a typical capitalist type operation, really, what it was. Well, the main policy in China does not go on a modern capitalist sense. It goes on a certain different sense of freedom. They locate freedom in the development of the mental life of the individual in China and in other nations. It's not an economic money thing. That's not the concentration. In China, the cultural development is largely inspired. It's inspired by remembering the best features of old China culture and trying to bring them back to life and to bring other nations into cooperation, like the win-win policy of the Chinese government, for example. Now you have some leftovers still operating in China with certain policies which are, protected sort of by the China government. But they're not, so they put it in a separate category. But they're not following the same principles as the leadership of China does today in terms of its economic policy. Therefore, what happened is some gamblers got loose, among virtual gamblers, got loose in the idea of how to run the local economy. Their little niche, that small niche in the economy. So what you're getting in the international reports are fake. This is not a big deal. It's a small deal. It's an annoying deal. It's an annoying problem for China. But it's not a big problem. China is the most powerful nation on the planet right now. And it has an internal problem, so what? The biggest nation on the planet right now does not have a real threat against it. It has a little problem, like cleaning up the dirty windows or cleaning up little mistakes here and there. They'll do it sooner or later anyway. Maybe they should have done it sooner, but I'm not going to pass judgment on that. I know what China's policy is. I've become well informed about China's policy. I know what the policy is. I understand it to a certain extent, as far as a foreigner could, from my history, experience in that neck of the woods, in Asia, for example. So I'm not worried about that. I let China tell me what they worry about that. They probably don't want to talk about it. They've got to just clean the problem up in their own way. So I'm not going to involve myself in it.
Okay, we're going to take another question here. All right.
Hello, I'm Barbara from Louisiana. And Mr. LaRouche, I have been with your organization, following your organization for, I guess, about 3-4 years now. And I'm just so thankful for everything that you all are doing for this country. We need you. I wish you were president.
Well, I'm an old geezer, but I've still got my legs on. I just had a brief medical checkup, and I'm in fine shape. Bad news for my enemies.
Oh, goodness. Well, I pray for you every day because we need you. I'm just so thankful for LaRouche Pack and you. I have a very strange question tonight.
Okay.
And I'm from Louisiana, and I speak French. But I'm 61, so I have been raised at the time when President Kennedy was in office, and I saw a lot of controversy, a lot of liberal actions, civil and everything. So I understand all this that's going on with this Confederate stuff, and it's a little fearful. And what my question is, I would like to know, do you think that the British Empire is working hard to try to cause another civil war within our country?
It always has been, in a sense. You've seen it also in the southern states, for example, which have been often seed beds of dissension. In one part, for example, if you get in certain areas in the hills of certain southern states, you'll find you think you're back in the slave system. I've been there and seen there and lived in that environment for short periods of time, and I know what it's like. The southern states are a mess. They are inherently a mess. For example, you have the highest murder rate, the death rate, is in Florida. And people think of Florida as the paradise, but it's not. Look at the death rate in Florida. So the problem is the states have lots of problems. The southern states generally have the greatest problems, the worst problems. And that's a reflection of what the Civil War was all about. It's still then. You get something in Texas, which is a problem, and you get some good things in Texas. You get some good things in various parts of different states in the United States. So the problem is we have not done enough. I mean, the presidential system, as it has been developed, especially since my time, that is, I was served for a while, for a short period of time under a president. I actually, and indirectly, I also served under another president. But my experience is that this problem exists. I believe that, however, that if we can introduce a true Glass-Steagall law, which is now on the agenda, that by doing that, we will find that we can reshape the economic policy and also the social policy of all the states in the United States. And that's my intention, that should happen. And therefore, you've got a nest of people here and there who have the good ideas, may not have perfect ideas, but have good ideas. Then you have a few people who have some not so good ideas running around. And we haven't sorted that out yet. We have to sort it out. But I think since the corruption is not really located in the local cities or the local states, the problem is located in the United States as a whole. And people like to say, blame one state, blame another state. Well, these states do have problems. But the problem is the failure of the federal government. If the federal government follows the policy of Alexander Hamilton, for example, this thing would not continue as a problem.
Okay, we're going to go to our next question here.
Hello, my name is Philippe from Queens, New York. I know you've been talking a lot about Glass-Steagall. I just wanted you to quickly reiterate how quickly Glass-Steagall can change the country and why the people of the U.S. should care about it enough to get out of their own way to make sure it's passed.
The states that they are not willing to get Glass-Steagall into motion fairly quickly, then the United States isn't going to be around much longer. If, however, on the other hand, we install Glass-Steagall as it has been proposed now for immediate action, and that is implemented, since Wall Street is already bankrupt, hopelessly bankrupt, which is a real urgency for that action. I mean, you've got these senators are making a sudden decision to go to Glass-Steagall after all these years. Why do you think four senators, leading senators, have come together on this issue now? Because they know that if Wall Street continues to run the United States as it has been doing, the United States may disappear. And anyone who's not for Wall Street right now is really not a patriot of the United States. And that's the solution. Glass-Steagall is the solution. It was the solution for Franklin Roosevelt. It's the solution for today.
Okay. All right. Well, here we take another question.
Yes. I heard. My name's Steve from Maryland. I heard today that China was going bankrupt. What was that all about?
That's a puffed up story. There's a problem in a minor section of the Chinese economy, which was not changed from when the new policy of China was put into place. And they just set it one side without getting a quarrel, because China has the habit of not getting quarrels within its own place of own positions, at least today, and dealing soft. Don't try to force things too much. Influence. China's policy is, China is an ancient nation. It's one of the oldest nations, functioning nations that ever existed. It's had its ups and downs in various parts of the time. Great leaders in the modern era worked closely with China at times. And China, we have some access, if people were students in this, have some access to know what the history of the ups and downs of China's history. And China is one of the leading culture in depth of all the nations of the planet. Now, in that planet, they came along with a reform. The reform was done by the present administration of China, or the continuing administration of China. And there were certain problems which were not convenient to be taken head on at that time. They had other business to do, which is much more important business. And therefore they just put something, okay, you can go in that little niche, and we won't hurt you. Well, in the little niche, they began not behaving itself. And so they had some problems. And this caused that this separate section, which had been given a privilege to run its own business, ran out of control by speculative investments, which meant as anything like Wall Street is, Wall Street's an incompetent industry. You have to eliminate it. In this case, the China has to get this thing back in order. They didn't touch it, really. They just let it work in it as a niche all onto itself. But the necessary reforms, which for that niche, were not installed by China at that time, because they had other business to attend to. Much more important business for the world as a whole, because China is really a driver of the international processes today. China is the most important nation right now on the planet. So this nation is that. But what the problem comes is the gossip. The gossip comes from the United States and from other sources, saying that China is having a great crisis. It's not having a great crisis. It's having an unpleasant experience, which will be solved out in due course. But you'll have people like the United States. The Obama administration will do everything it can to make a mess in China. That's its policy. So you're not surprising. You can't be surprised that this little problem arises, because there are forces which will, on the sense of free economy and so forth, will use that as a way of causing some trouble. But China will deal with that problem. China is capable of dealing with the problem. He's a master of the thing. China is much more skilled at these things than the President of the United States is.
Okay, take another question. Here we go.
Hello, Lynn. My name is Ali Ozegi from Los Angeles. I started with your original youth movement and second youth movement, in '99. I wanted to thank you deeply, first of all, for giving me a soul back. Before, I would have just been lost in this world without any real understanding of classical culture, what's going on, or any of that. So thank you for giving me a soul. That was very helpful. I wanted to, the very first thing that I heard from you was at the Cadre School where you said we have to take out Enron. And I thought, yeah, right, we're not taking out Enron, but we'll try. And as you know, events transpired and so forth, and that was very motivating. I'm having a hard time keeping up with the optimism and the motivation and not getting stuck in the ugly instead of focusing on solutions, focusing on problems, and things of that nature. Also, I never shied away from the Obama mustache. I never shied away from the Children of Satan pamphlet. And I know it's true, but every time I hear thermonuclear war, I personally cringe and I retract instead of actually fully, taking it in, because it is an incredibly serious nature. I was curious if you had any thoughts on these two things.
Yeah, sure. We're on the verge of thermonuclear war. The origin of thermonuclear war is the British monarchy, the British Empire. The present instrument of thermonuclear war is the President of the United States, Obama. And, for example, that's one of the reasons why some senators are pushing Glass-Steagall now. Because if we don't create a moral effect on the people of the United States, and the best place to do it is in the Senate of the United States. If they put through a law which is going to change the circumstances of the United States, at the same time that Wall Street is going bankrupt. Wall Street is now fully bankrupt. It's hopelessly bankrupt. It can never be revived again. It's finished. So now we have a bunch of 4 senators who move quickly to put in Glass-Steagall. Why are they rushing with that thing with Glass-Steagall after all these years? Well, because Wall Street is bankrupt and virtually dead, and the corpse has to be buried. How do you do that? Glass-Steagall. Return to Glass-Steagall. We have a system that'll work. Don't believe all the propaganda. I mean, if you know economics as I do, and I'm probably one of the best known people in that field on the planet right now. I mean, I'm my age and so forth. I had a lot of experience, and I know this system. We can solve the problem very quickly. It requires willingness to solve the problem. But what we've seen with those 4 senators, members of the Senate on Glass-Steagall, when they rush in with that thing, at the same moment that Wall Street is going hopelessly bankrupt, dead. Guess what? Some members of the Congress, of the Senate, said, let's get rid of the corpse, i.e. Wall Street.
Okay. Well, we'll take one more question here, Lynn, and then we'll wrap it up for this evening. I have one thing I just want to stress at the end before you wrap up from what you've said. I think everyone on the call should take note of what we have to do and what we have to put into motion immediately tomorrow. But I'm going to take one more question up here. Here we go.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I've unmuted someone. They may not know they're unmuted, but they may may be talking and not realize they're unmuted. Well, I guess we'll have to try a different person here. Hold on one second. All right, here we go.
Hello?
Hello, uh-huh.
Yes, hi. I am Carol. I'm an activist from Los Angeles. And I just have a quick question. That little escapade that they did yesterday morning on the news with this glitches, these computer glitches with Wall Street shutting it down for 3 hours and some of the airlines and stuff. Was this just some kind of ploy to distract people, or was this for real?
Well, of course, on the one hand, it does have the effect that you would expect from that kind of problem. But also there is a real crisis in terms of what the airlines are trying to do. Some of the airlines in particular are trying to do is to pull a swindle, which is done for money purposes, or peculiar kinds of money purposes. You know, you have the plane, for example, the planes that are flying in some airlines don't have full passenger supply. In other words, they limit the number of passengers far below the level of what the plane's capacities are. And this has become a very peculiar kind of thing for which there is no really adequate explanation to my knowledge. But I know it's creepy something or other, and it's caused a problem. I think that what we have to recognize is that the disorder in the financial system of the United States has had a great effect on making the problems of the airline industry. And that the fact that these effects have acted on the industry, as I see the evidence, the evidence of the confusion is obvious to me even at this distance. So obviously they're trying to do something which is some kind of economic jimbo, mungo, or whatever. And it's screwing things up. And so therefore that incident has occurred. The full details, I don't know, but I know what the general principle is. When you got an airline, there's an airline system. And the airline system is a system which is naturally functional. And it becomes dysfunctional, not for any reason that you would think of airline operations, but because somebody's trying to make a mungo-jungo or something out of the airline system. And that thing backfired. Whatever it was, it backfired.
Okay. Well, Lynn, we've covered tremendous ground here this evening, but I think your theme from the beginning has been absolutely clear. And I just, even though we did not get any reports yet from our activists on their mobilization around Glass-Steagall, I think by next Thursday we certainly shall have that. And I just would, okay, so I'm just encouraging everyone on the call, if we've heard Lyndon LaRouche here this evening repeatedly indicate that we have got to kick these people in the U.S. Congress. It's going to require a full-out mobilization of our entire movement, both throughout the states, the labor unions, state legislators, calls into Congress, and I can guarantee everyone on the phone that all the organizers you're in touch with are all fully geared up concerning getting this moving, and there's no time to waste on this. So I'm hoping by next Thursday we will get some feedback and reports. Maybe some people might call with a distress report that they've got their kind of boot stuck, kicking their congressman in the wrong place. They're a little stuck because they kicked him too hard or something. We'll even entertain reports like that. So, Lynn, did you want to make any final remarks here this evening in terms of what we should leave people with this evening?
No, essentially we are, as I have mentioned elsewhere, we are now moving to support the functions of Manhattan as a really purely centralized function for the nation, which is what Alexander Hamilton intended. And we're trying to make that thing work. Now, we find that in the New York City area and adjacent areas, we have the greatest relative degree of coherence on this. And I'm familiar with the New York population. I haven't been there directly for any long time, but for many years I was based in New York City, and part of it, and sometimes successful as a businessman and otherwise. But now I'm where I am, and I'm still doing it. So from here, I realize that this is the case. We're trying to find focal points in the United States of localities which can be used as building blocks for larger parts of the United States as a whole. That is, how do we take each part of the United States with its peculiarities as a state? How do we assess what the potential is how do we get to put the potential into motion? Because we're a broken down nation. The United States has been affected by breaking down of our economy. It's been going on for a long time. It's been getting worse and worse and worse and worse. You look at the employment opportunities, look at the lifestyle opportunities. The degeneration of the conditions of life of the average citizen of the United States and the children and so forth is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So the problem is to reverse that trend by taking measures which we know we can handle, that is, measures which we know by principle will work, and get those things into motion. And we're concentrating to a great degree on Hamilton himself, whose tomb is located in the southern part of Manhattan. But he was the founder of the nation. He was the actual founder of the nation. And George Washington became the president who he pushed to become the first president. And he laid the policies on which George Washington worked, and quite well on the economic issues in particular, and also strategic ideas. He was one of the first-rate geniuses of his time, great genius of his time. And he was murdered. He was murdered by a British agent. And that's what happened. And British agents are things I despise. British agents are the intrinsic enemies of the United States. And that's my view on the matter.
And I think, I believe, Lynn, that we're coming up to tomorrow. There will be, according to Lynn Speed, who helps coordinate our work in Manhattan, a rally on Wall Street. And this is around several anniversaries, one of which I believe is of that duel involving Hamilton. And another anniversary, which is concerning a special cabinet meeting that took place involving George Washington. So tomorrow I expect that we'll have coverage of a rally on Wall Street, which of course will focus on the question of Glass-Steagall. So I think, look, I hope that everyone will take what you heard Lyndon LaRouche said tonight to heart, to get moving on it. We will look forward to speaking with everyone last week. Thank you very much, Lynn. This is the end of our 8th Fireside Chat, and I hear your dog is calling an end to the call right now. All right. Your dog's timing was excellent there, Lynn. They're very well trained.
I was
all right. Okay, great. All right, thank you very much, everybody, and good evening, everyone.
Your conference recording has stopped. Goodbye.